Hello, this is Michel Leviathan Sorbet and this is a new episode of Wojennik TV. If you ask anyone what was the biggest Napoleon's I victory, many people will answer Austerlitz, and they won't be wrong. Because this battle, the battle fought in 1805, was by far one of the most important during the Napoleonic Wars. It was a huge French success against forces superior in numbers, composed of Austrian and Russian troops. This battle was important also because not only it ended one of the coalitions formed against France, it also was somewhat of a milestone. It was a clash between the old order symbolized by the two emperors present near the battlefield, the Austrian and the Russian emperor, and the new forces led by a soldier emperor, Napoleon I, and the post-revolutionary France. So this was a moment in time when the old seemed to be passing and the new to taking over. Of course, the Napoleonic Wars ended in 1814 or 1815, if you prefer, with the re-establishment of the old order. But the world that came after was really not the same as it was before. Having said that, Austerlitz is a battle which is not very often used as a topic in war games. By far the topic most often used as a subject of a war game is Waterloo, and the reason is quite simple. We had British troops in it, Napoleon lost, so those were two factors which attracted attention of people and which makes this battle interesting. Not to say that having British on the battlefield and on the game board attracts more possible wargamers than French troops opposed against Austrian and Russian troops. But having said that, Austerlitz 1805 is a really very interesting battle, and today I have the pleasure to show you one of the recent games which are about this battle. This game is called, as you might expect, Austerlitz 1805, and it was published by the Spanish company Trafalgar Editions. The game was released in 2020, but preceded by a successful Kickstarter campaign back in 2019. The author of this game is José Antonio Luengo. The game is for 2 to several players, but it is also solitaire friendly. It has some solo rules. The time of play will be from 1 hour to several hours. It will all depend on the scenario of the number of players involved. Today I would like to show you one of the two versions of this game, because this game was published in two versions. In a version with counters, and this will be the one that I will be showing you, and with wooden blocks, which was an additional version offered to Kickstarter backers who had chosen a different pledge level. So, without further delay, let's take a look at the content of Austerlitz 1805. Here is Austerlitz 1805 with a fantastic, elegant, very minimalistic but very appealing box cover. As you can see, it is just a blue background with one huge tree and a morning fog, which really makes me think of a winter scenery. On the back side of this elegant box, we get to see how some elements of the game look like. We can read about the game both in English and in Spanish. We can take a look at the list of the components which are inside. We can also take a look at the metrics which tell us that the complexity of the game is rated at a medium level, and at the same time it is a multiplayer game, so it is possible to play it both solitaire but also in a group of two. It is possible to be played by two players. We get the same information in the scales, where we can see that the time scale is 1 hour per game turn. It is for one or more players, so it is possible to play it multiplayer. The unit scale is as follows. For infantry and cavalry it will be a brigade level. For the artillery it will be a battery level. Playing time is 1 hour or more, so the maximum time is not mentioned. I believe it will be a few hours. Let's take a look inside. The first element will be the rule book. As you can see, 2 copies of the rule book in Spanish and in English. The Spanish one will be a little bit longer, 32 pages, but Spanish is a language with longer words. English is a language with very short words compared to other languages. So due to this fact, 4 pages less in the English version of the rulebook. A fantastic picture at the cover of this rulebook, and then the rules. The rules, as you can see, printed on high quality paper in color with some examples, which is always a nice addition when reading rule books, because it is much easier to understand how a game works if we can see how the mechanics explained are presented on some graphic examples. The rules are divided into a couple of parts. The first part will be the basic rules up to point 18, where we can read about the setup. Then we get to read about the advanced rules, the optional route rule, the Allied artillery, and the La Grande Armée d'Allemagne additional rules. And at the end of this booklet, we get also the solo rules from 22 to 25, as I believe. This is a game in which we will receive additional solo rules. But apart from that, we receive also an example of a game turn, which is always an even better addition compared to the graphic examples, because it will allow us to better understand how the mechanics of the game work. Then we get some screens, as I believe. They will be placed in front of our forces, as I believe. 2 of them. This one will be obviously be the French, and the second one will be the Allied screen with the historical objectives of both sides. The Allies will get their own and the French their own, in 2 languages, English and Spanish, with some additional tables, the fog table, cheats columns, move columns between areas. So 1 for each player, if we played in a group of 2 players. Then we get 2 maps, maybe strategical maps, with the French point of view and the Allied point of view, so 1 for each side, with the location of the course of both sides, with also some spaces to put additional information. Those will be very useful during gameplay. Then we get the scenario cards, 3 of them. Each is double-sided. As you might expect, one side is in English, the second one will be in Spanish. The first scenario, Road to Telnitz. The description: the Allied army tries to break the French right flank in Telnitz. We get an operational, or rather strategical, representation, the list of forces, the game length, the rules governing deployment, and additional special rules. The second one is called North Flank, Lance against Bagration, which is, as you can see, a more complex scenario, lasting 7 turns also, but with a great number of units. And the last one is the French attack Pratzenberg, with really a lot of additional units, with also a length of 8 turns. So this will be the longest one. Then we get additional player aids, 2 of them, each double-sided, so English and French as well, English and Spanish as well. This one will be the player aid where we can find fire modifiers, fire and combat table, combat modifiers, and on the second one we'll get information about the fog table, about the cheats, so the same information that we got on
the player screens, but also the terrain effects table, as you can see. Not a lot of them, but with some fire effects and combat effects of each of those terrains. As you can see, those player aids printed on cardboard pages with a fantastic background, blue background. I like it a lot. Then the counters. The first counter sheet will be the counter sheet with some utility tokens, with some markers, for instance, musketry, charge, combat, some additional modifiers, some artilleries present, but also some units. Here we get some corps, for instance, Davos or Soult's, Lance, Murat, and we get also Napoleon's counter and Kutuzov's counter as well. Very pretty, very nice. This is the same quality that we got in Norway 1940, really a very high standard. I love the artwork. The second counter has some additional counters with also some special counters here, for instance, Ice Broken, which will be used, as I believe, with the lakes or the ponds which were present at the Austerlitz battlefield at the time of the battle. Then we get also some additional markers and a special marker which will be used with artillery or canister fire. This is not the first time that Trafalgar Editions includes a special measuring tool in their game. In Norway 1940 we also got a ruler used for aircraft, so here we got another one used for artillery. This is somewhat of a thing that is something which is quite unique when it comes to war games, and Trafalgar Editions always adds such an interesting gadget to their games. Then the third counter sheet with the units, and here we can find, for instance, Vandamme, we can find Friant, or Repinski, or for instance Wittgenstein, or we can find even Olsufiev, who encountered Napoleon 10 years later at the battlefield of Champaubert, where his corps had been demolished. So he got the opportunity to fight Napoleon twice in his career. Both times those battles ended very poorly for this Russian officer. Then we get also 4 dice, 2 blue, 2 red, and finally the game map, which is, as you can see, a mounted game map composed of 2 parts. The southern part is as follows. It is a very sturdy, high quality map on which the counters will be extremely well visible. Very pretty. I like it because it is not too complex, it is quite simple, it is minimalistic, but it will enable to very well visualize what is happening at the battlefield. At the bottom we get also the turn track where we will be tracking time. The second part of the board will be the northern part, also mounted and of pretty much the same quality, but representing the northern part of the battlefield. So both attached together will form the entire Austerlitz battlefield. As you can see, some woods or swamps at the northern part, and a lot of small villages or a lot of small farms, which will also be important during the battle. And this is it when it comes to the elements of Austerlitz 1805 by Trafalgar Editions. Now I'd like to invite you to a short conclusion. I'd like to give you my initial thoughts.
After browsing through the components which are inside the box of Austerlitz 1805, I can just say, wow, that is fantastic. Those elements are extremely pretty. I love the artwork on the box cover. I love the quality of we get because this is a game which really shines when you take a look at how it looks. So this exterior aspect of Austerlitz 1805 is just top notch. I love the counters, which are extremely elegant, which seem to be extremely functional. I love the colors used. I like the fact that we get a big mounted mountboard divided into two parts, which reminds me of old classics such as Kriegspiel or maybe from the newer titles of W1815. So this game has all what it takes to be a good game when we judge it by its visual aspect. I love the player aids and the fact that we get the blue background, which reminds us of the box cover, which reminds us of the morning fog of 1805 when the battle took place. Now, this is of course only based on my visual opinion about the components, about how the game plays and about the mechanics. I'll be able to tell you more during a future review. This is not the first game of Trafalgar Editions that I'm presenting you on Wojennik TV. I had the pleasure to review Norway 1940 a few years back, and at that time I was extremely frustrated by the badly written rules. This was one of the major issues with that game, and I really hope that in the case of Austerlitz 1805 it will not be the same. I really hope that the rulebook is well written, with a good flow, with the rules well presented, and especially with a well presented setup, which was a nightmare in Norway 1940. But having said all that, I strongly believe that this game will be much better, that it will be both pretty on the board and also very pleasant to play. As I said a few moments ago, I will tell you a lot more about this title during a future review. Now I'm just impressed and I will jump into the rulebook to prepare my first play. This was the unboxing of Austerlitz 1805, published by Trafalgar Editions. I invite you to take a look at our other videos. We have unboxings, we have reviews. Take also a look at our Facebook or Instagram accounts. Have a terrific day and see you next time.